Hello, I'm Edward October. Over the years, I've narrated more ghost stories, horror shows, and creepypastas than I can count. And yet, the crimes discussed on our true crime podcast managed to scare the shit out of me. This program is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. If you are such a person, go ahead and switch off this podcast. Listen to something else. Are you still with us? Well, we've warned you.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Cam. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty okay. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? I hear you have a case for us today?
I do. This one is, kind of shocking. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never heard of this man before, so.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you have. I don't know.
I don't know. I can't wait. Let's go.
All right. On a frigid, cold night in 1976 in a western suburb of Chicago, 16-year-old Pamela Maurer was hanging out at her friend's house in the 2500 block of Crabtree in Woodbridge. A junior at Downer Grove's South High School, Pamela had a sweet smile and lots of friends. Pam lived on Butternut Court, just a few blocks from her friend Kathy Robertson's house on Crabtree Avenue. Around 9:45 p.m., Pam decided she needed a pick-me-up and told her friends that she was heading out to get a soda. Most people assumed she just went to McDonald's, which was 2 blocks from Kathy's house, but there was also a laundromat across the street from McDonald's that had a vending machine, so it's not entirely clear on which one she went to. But both were in the same direction, and so Pam put on her plaid coat and headed out on that frozen night, her breath billowing and wind catching on the wind. She pulled her coat close and made her way through the snow-covered neighborhood. When Pam didn't return to Kathy's house that night, none of her friends were that worried. After all, her curfew was at 10 p.m., and they just assumed she went straight to her home after buying her soda. But Pam never made it to McDonald's or the laundromat. She never made it home either. Pam's parents, Betty and Louis, became concerned when 10:30 came and went and there was no sign of their daughter. Finally, at 11:45, Betty Maurer reported Pam missing to the police. Now, there's no reports on whether or not any kind of search was done for Pam that night, but being the time frame, it's doubtful that there was. Remember, they had to wait 48 hours.
They'll be back.
They'll be home,
They're just running around.
Right, and the police took the information, and they didn't seem so concerned about it. That was until 7:25 the next morning when a county road commissioner in Lisle, Illinois, stopped his car to investigate what appeared to be a purse lying on College Road just south of Benedictine University. While the road was well traversed, it was also tree-lined and quiet. The ice and snow crunched beneath the commissioner's shoes as he walked to the side of the road to investigate. When he picked up the purse, he saw the body of Pamela Maurer lying frozen in the snow just on the other side of the guardrail. When the police arrived on the scene, they first thought that Pam, who was fully clothed, had been a victim of a hit and run, but they soon found bruises around her throat. Medical examiners determined that she had been strangled to death. The only evidence left at the scene was a 3-foot section of half-inch thick hose. For the first few months, investigators didn't reveal to the public in the newspapers that Pamela Maurer had been sexually assaulted. The perpetrator's DNA had been left on the body, which police carefully preserved for a future date when, hopefully, technology might be advanced enough to help the investigation. Then the police got down to business and interviewed Pamela's family, friends, and acquaintances. The first person police zeroed in was, not surprisingly, Pamela's boyfriend. Her boyfriend had initially cooperated with the investigation, and he told them that he hadn't been with Pam that night because he had been grounded and he didn't have access to a vehicle. But upon realizing that they suspected him of foul play, he lawyered up. He asked for a lawyer. And of course, this immediately raised a red flag with investigators. They interviewed his mother, who said her son had been with them all evening. And the police weren't happy with that alibi, though, because it's not uncommon for parents to lie to protect their children. And for this reason, Pam's boyfriend remained a suspect for most of his life. Another suspect was Michael Basso. He had a criminal record and worked at a gas station at 75th and James, which just happened to be across from the laundromat that Pam might have gone to that night. One night, shortly after Pam's murder, Basso was in a bar and drunkenly admitted to having murdered her. And when he was brought in for questioning, of course, he denied having committed the murder and even went so far as to say he couldn't remember confessing to the crime. He took a polygraph, which proved inconclusive. Another reason the police suspected him is because the type of hose that was found near Pam's body. It turned out to be the type of hose used in car engines. And since he worked at a gas station, Basso would have had access to that type of hose. The police put together an all-volunteer task force. It's FIAT, otherwise known as Felony Investigation Assistance Team, and was made up from several investigators from different departments. A promising lead came in when a woman reported that on the night Pam had been abducted and murdered, she had been walking in the same area, and a man driving a Mercury Capri stopped and offered her a ride, which she refused. She said he was a white male, about 25 years of age and around 5 foot 9 inches tall. The woman noticed he had a white bundle on the seat next to him. When she refused his offer, she asked if she would possibly model for him, which she also declined. The woman said that this occurred around approximately 11:45 p.m., and they had estimated that Pam Maurer had been murdered at around 10:30 p.m. From this report, the police were able to make a composite sketch of the man, but none of it really mattered. None of the clues panned out. The hose they found turned out to be a very common type of hose that anybody could buy. I mean, there was never enough evidence to charge either Pam's boyfriend or Michael Basso, and no new clues or eyewitnesses ever came forward, and the case just simply went cold. In 1993, new hope to solve the case came in the form of DNA testing. It's still in its infancy at the time, and DNA testing was a brand new tool coming into the scene. Investigators reopened the Pamela Maurer case and tested Michael Basso's and Pam's boyfriend's DNA. The DNA didn't match either one of them. And it also didn't match any samples in CODIS. This disappointed Pam's family, who had subsequently moved to Texas, and it was also very disappointing to law enforcement because the case remained unsolved. However, the DNA tests did clear the name of Michael Basso and Pam's boyfriend, which was a huge relief to them. They had been the only two suspects named in the case, and they lived under a cloud of suspicion the whole time. That'd be so difficult because it was a huge case.
Mm-hmm.
And
in a town, everybody stares at you.
And you never get rid of that. I mean, even though they're cleared, they never get rid of it.
No, never.
So now the police knew who didn't kill her, but what about who did kill her? Unfortunately, DNA only really helps solve a crime if there's something to compare it to. And without a suspect to test against, the case went cold once again. With advancements in science came a new tool called forensic DNA phenotyping. We've talked about this before. And according to Wikipedia, phenotyping, also known as molecular photofitting, is primarily used to refer to the prediction of a person's physical appearance and or biogeographic ancestry for forensic purposes. And that was a quote from Wikipedia because, I can't say all those long words by myself.
I was just going to say those were some big words. I was pretty impressed with you.
Yes. No, straight from Wiki itself. So in 2001, the DNA that the police had collected in 1976 was used to develop a new type of profile for Pam's killer. The test said that the person who killed Pam had a 93% chance of having green eyes. And since only 2% of the population has green eyes, investigators felt that this prediction could be useful, very helpful. In addition to this prediction of eye color, hair color, biogeographical information, the computer came up with a composite drawing of the person who most likely killed Pam. Unfortunately, this still didn't tell them the identity of Pam's killer, and once again, the police waited for the science to advance or for the perpetrator to make a mistake and end up with his DNA in CODIS. And years went by.
Come on, CODIS. Come on.
I know. Come on. Finally, in 2020, investigators decided to give genetic genealogy a try. Luckily for them, the science had advanced, and each time it did so, it revealed a little bit more and more about the man who killed Pam. And genetic genealogy had been used to find and convict the Golden State Killer in 2018. Forensic genetic genealogy is when investigators use a suspect's DNA from a crime scene and match it to the DNA on public genealogical websites. People across the USA take DNA tests and send them to genealogical websites to find long-lost relatives, adoptive parents, children, connect and bust through those dead ends on their family trees, or sometimes just to see what country of origin their ancestors came from. Once an investigator gets a match from their suspects to a person on the genealogical websites, they pare it down, following the family tree information of those matches to figure out what family the perpetrator might belong to. In the case of Pam Maurer, investigators were able to determine that the person who killed her most likely had the last name of Lindahl.
Oh.
The police were then able to determine that the family with the last name Lindahl lived in the area where Pamela Maurer lived, and there were 2 sons the right age, and one of them had green eyes.
Mm-mm.
Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely blows my head. Science.
Unreal.
I know. The man the police had been looking for since 1976 was Bruce Everett Lindahl, born in St. Charles, Illinois in 1953. Bruce had gone to Downers Grove North High School. He got a degree in electromechanics and worked as an electrician. Despite the fact that he occasionally had violent outbursts and poor impulse control, most people liked Bruce. Unfortunately, there would be no real justice for Pam Maurer. No day in court, no satisfaction when Lindahl would have inevitably been sentenced to life in prison because Bruce was dead.
Dang it, I knew you were going to say that.
And the most shocking part in this whole case, really, the twist that's far greater than anything James Patterson could ever think of, in one of his mystery books, was that Bruce Lindahl had accidentally stabbed himself in the leg.
He killed himself on accident?
His femoral artery, and it bled out while he was murdering his last victim.
Sweet justice, poetic justice is what that is.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. But being dead didn't let that stop investigators from retrieving a DNA sample, so they had his body exhumed, took a DNA swab, and compared it to the DNA left on Pam Maurer, and it matched. And there was no doubt, after 44 years, they finally identified the person who had murdered the 16-year-old who had innocently walked to McDonald's for a soda on a cold night in 1976. The phenotyping was also spot on, and Lindahl having blue-green eyes and the composite sketch was an astonishing likeness to Lindahl's high school photo. However, the story doesn't end here. In fact, investigators would soon discover that the story was just starting. In April of 1981, Bruce Lindahl had been out looking for fun in the entertainment districts of Naperville, Illinois. He met 18-year-old Charles Robert Huber Jr., known as Chuck, and they played a few rounds of bowling at the Gallo West bowling lanes. Huber worked at the local Red Lobster, and it's unknown if he and Lindahl had just met that night or if they'd been acquaintances before. It's suspected that Bruce invited Chuck back to his girlfriend's apartment to continue the party and drink some beer. And once they were in the apartment of Bruce's girlfriend, Bruce attacked Chuck, stabbing him 28 times.
Wow.
And as I had already mentioned, in the frenzied attack, Bruce accidentally stabbed himself in the thigh and also died as a result of that self-inflicted injury. The newspaper at the time reported on this case, stating that Lindahl's girlfriend came home to find Bruce collapsed on top of Chuck's body with blood spattered all over the living room of her apartment. The Chicago Tribune said Bruce had been on leave of absence from work since January and resigned in March. And the article also ruminates on the fact that Bruce didn't seem to have a motive on attacking Chuck. However, the real eye-opener of that particular newspaper article was the fact that, quote, Lindahl had allegedly accosted a 26-year-old woman as she walked through Northgate Shopping Center in Aurora, Illinois back in June 23rd of 1980, forced her into his car, and took her to his apartment and raped her. That woman was Debbie Colliander, who went missing on October of 1980, just before she was due to testify against Bruce for sexual assault.
Oh.
Bruce Lindahl was known to Naperville police as a loser who had been arrested many times but never had any felony convictions on his record. In March of 1979, Lindahl lured 20-year-old Annette Lazar into his home in Aurora and raped her at gunpoint. Annette had willingly agreed to go to Bruce's home because she thought he was going to sell her some weed, marijuana, right? And Bruce eventually let Annette go after she agreed that she would return to his home for more sex at a later date. She even went so far as to leave her phone number for him.
Do what you gotta do.
Yep. But however, when Annette went to the police to report this sexual assault, the police didn't believe her since she had given Bruce her phone number.
You do what you have to do to get away.
Thank you. You do, to get away alive. When questioned, Bruce claimed that, you know what, Annette's my new girlfriend. And in addition to that, the home in which the rape occurred belonged to a police officer, Dave Torres, who is a friend of Bruce's.
Oh, yes, it gets a little muddier now. Mm-hmm.
And as a result, her testimony was disregarded and no charges were ever filed against Bruce for that rape. In December of that same year, Lindahl offered to pay a woman for sex, but upon her refusal, he attacked her. Before he could do severe damage to her, he realized that there was lots of witnesses around, and so he fled the scene. The victim contacted the police and was shown a photo lineup for her to choose from, and Lindahl's photo was not in the lineup, so she identified a man who looked the most like him. And once again, Bruce escaped any punishment. Bruce Lindahl had been pulled over by the police sometime in the late 1970s, and police discovered an unconscious woman bleeding from a deep gash in her head. Bruce claimed he was taking the woman to the nearest hospital, but, he was going in the opposite direction, so that was probably a lie. The police called an ambulance, and that ambulance took the woman to the hospital, where an examination revealed that she had been raped. The woman stated that she'd been at a party where Bruce had offered her a drink, but she had no memory of the evening's events. And no charges were ever filed against Bruce for this assault. Upon searching Bruce Lindahl's apartment right after his death, the police found several photographs of young girls. One photograph is most likely of Deborah McCall, a 16-year-old girl who was last seen in Downers Grove, Illinois on November 5th, 1979. She left the Downers Grove North High School that day and was never seen or heard from again. Based on McCall's last location, her age, and the fact her photo was found in Lindahl's apartment it's led authorities to believe that Bruce was responsible for her disappearance and, most likely, her death.
I'm just thinking about how he could have been caught a long time ago, but it's just like a series of comical errors. Just let him keep going.
Or just because the police didn't want to get him.
I guess, but I think, I would hope, I say that now, but I would hope that in today's world, if you pulled a guy over and there's somebody passed out in the car, we're gonna
with a gash in their forehead. Yeah,
we're gonna hold you till she can come to and talk about it,
or at least get your name and address. So if anything else suspicious comes up, you can find.
No, I think we'd still hold you. I think you could give a fake address, and by that time you'd be gone.
But if you give your driver's license, is what I'm saying. You have to give ID.
I don't know. I think I'd keep him anyway. He's got to stay put. Getting a good night's sleep is essential to your health. According to the National Institute of Aging, lack of sleep has been associated with poor quality of life and increased risk for diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, and even death. People who don't get enough sleep are also at a higher risk of stroke or dementia.
And many women, including me, wake up many times at night and then have problems going back to sleep. It's so frustrating. But since I've been using sleep cream, it rarely happens. Made in the USA, sleep cream is a natural alternative to traditional sleep aids. There are no pills, just a topical cream that you can rub on your neck. Sleep cream uses the highest quality CBD isolate and organic essential oils to calm your mind and help you fall asleep. Just rub the light lavender scented lotion on your neck and arms, and it'll start to calm your brain, making it easier to fall asleep.
Now, I know some people hear CBD and they worry about failing a drug test or feeling high. But don't worry, there's no THC in sleep cream, so that's not going to happen. What will happen is you will get a great night's sleep and be ready to take on the day. So this is your invitation to get your bottle of sleep cream. And if it doesn't work for you after a few nights, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase and you don't have to send anything back. That's a no-brainer.
So order your bottle today at sleepcream.com. That's sleepcreme.com, and use the code OTC podcast, all one word, at checkout to save $20 on your first order. Seriously, go now and go order your bottle at sleepcream.com. That's sleepcreme.com, and use the code OTC podcast, that's all one word, at checkout to save $20 on your first order. sleepcream.com. In January of 1981, Bruce Lindahl was arrested by the police for extortion. And during that confrontation, Bruce attacked a police officer. He was charged with resisting arrest, assault, and illegal possession of weapons. But he was once again released on bail. And that was probably where he took the leave of absence from his job. Finally, we come back to Deborah Colliander. On June 23rd, 1980, Bruce abducted Colliander, a native of Wisconsin who was 25 at the time, from a parking lot of a shopping center in Aurora, Illinois. She was busy locking up her bike when Bruce approached her and asked if she would help him start his car. She hesitated initially, but got into his vehicle, to step on the gas while he worked under the hood. Only instead of returning to the engine, he pulled a knife on her, and he shoved her further into the car and drove off with her. He then took her to his apartment where he raped her. He also photographed her while she was naked. And when Bruce fell asleep, Deborah made her escape. So very brave. A woman who lived down the street from Bruce said that she was loading her children in the car when Deborah came running towards her in the direction of Bruce's apartment, naked and crying for help. The neighbor took her in her house, gave her some clothes, and wrote down Deborah's story while it was still fresh. When Deborah told the woman that the man who raped her had amazing eyes, the woman knew that Colliander had been talking about Bruce Lindahl because that was the most striking feature about her neighbor. Deborah notified the police, and Bruce Lindahl was arrested and charged. Bruce paid his bail and was released. It appeared that, for once, Bruce would have to pay some consequences for his actions. On October 7th, just a few months before the upcoming trial where Deborah was due to testify against Bruce, Deborah Colliander went missing after leaving work. Since she couldn't testify, all the charges against Bruce were conveniently dropped. And the neighbor who helped Deborah that day said that Bruce would stand across the street and just stare at her house and watch her children, and it was as though he was silently threatening her to keep quiet. Bruce died just 6 months later in his attack on Chuck Huber, but in 1982, the decomposed remains of Deborah Colliander were discovered in a shallow grave in a farm field in Oswego Township. Soon after that, a man contacted the Aurora police, claiming that Bruce had offered him $2,000, whiskey, pills, and a handgun to kill Colliander because he didn't want her to testify against him. The man refused but didn't bother to contact the police with this information.
Mm-hmm.
The police now surmise that Bruce was forced to take care of Colliander when he couldn't hire a hitman. However, since Colliander's body was not found for several years, there's no DNA evidence, and, nothing could be collected from her remains. It's unlikely that her killer will ever be formally named, even though most believe that it is Bruce Lindahl.
Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm. After the DNA match to Bruce Lindahl in 2020 for the murder of Pamela Maurer, many women came forward with harrowing stories about him. One woman told the story of how her car wouldn't start, and Bruce was sitting in a car next to her, and he offered her a ride. When her car sputtered and started a few minutes later, she said that Bruce was shocked and angry and said, quote, "That shouldn't have started." She believes that he had tampered with her car, so she would be forced to accept his offer of a ride. Bruce's ex-girlfriend, Sherry Hobson, said that she had no idea the man she was dating was a killer or a rapist, but that certain red flags had begun to pop up as the relationship progressed. Aside from being quick to anger, she said that he would get rough in bed. He also drugged her, although she didn't realize it at the time.
Oh.
She once said that she had found a woman's earring in his car and confronted him about it, and Bruce just responded that it was his sister's, and then he rolled down the window and threw it out. All these stories are harrowing, and police now believe that Bruce Lindell was responsible for dozens of sexual assaults. But probably the most disturbing story of all is that after Bruce died, Virginia Garza and her husband bought the home that Lindell was living in at the time of his death. And since he hadn't died in the home, the Garzas weren't informed that they were buying the home of a killer. They had no idea their home was connected to a violent criminal. And while the police had done an initial search of Bruce's house after his death, and they'd found several photographs, including the one of 16-year-old Deborah McCall, they hadn't looked beyond the surface. So when the Garzas began cleaning things up and making repairs to their new home, Mr. Garza came upon hundreds of photographs of naked people hidden in the walls, the basement rafters, floorboards, and ceilings of the home. Just hundreds of photographs.
That's awful.
And since he didn't know and didn't understand the significance, he just threw them all away.
I think I would have called somebody. That's not normal. Still not normal.
The implication here is that Bruce could have been responsible for multiple rapes and possibly dozens of murders. Investigators have pieced together Bruce Lindell's whereabouts from 1974 to 1981 when he died. They've taken missing persons cases, unsolved murders, and sexual assaults and compared them to places where Bruce Lindell lived and worked throughout those 7 years and arrived at a number of victims as possibly being 12. The investigation into the deaths and disappearances of the dozen women continue to this day. However, it's important to note that not all the women who were murdered or raped or went missing in the suburbs of Chicago between those dates, 1974 and 81, were necessarily the victims of Bruce Lindell. The murder of Darlene Stack, found stabbed 35 times in August of 1976, turned out to be perpetrated by one Michael Whitney. Roberta Anderson, age 16, of Oswego, was stabbed 60 times in 1973. And in 1992, her killer, Major Morris Jr., was convicted of the crime. And Julie Hansen, age 15, stabbed 36 times and found in a cornfield, was killed by a man named Barry Lee Wepley.
How many killers are operating at this time?
Thank you.
Holy moly.
DNA played a part in solving all three of those crimes. Now, the biggest question that I'm sure that's springing into all our minds when we discuss this case with Bruce Everett Lindell is how he has gone undetected all these years. Considering he was just ramping up to the prime of his life when he died, it's possible he really could have surpassed Ted Bundy and Gacy with the number of victims if he hadn't taken himself out of the equation.
Thank goodness he did.
Why was he allowed to keep walking the streets after being accused several times of sexual assault? Was it simply because he was good looking with those stunning bright green blue eyes?
Killer's a killer.
Or was it because he had a good friend who was a police officer?
That's the one. Ding, ding, ding. I was going to say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Probably the police officer might have a little secret too. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I don't want to say anything
I'm just saying.
about that.
I'm just saying.
But it's amazing how people turned up raped and they could say it was him and he just got away with it all. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Pamela Maurer's death was tragic, cruel, and unnecessary, but it was because of her that Lindell's violent behavior finally came to light all these years later. There was simply no way to catch him at the time. Bruce was a total stranger to her. Murders committed by total strangers are the hardest to solve. But the victims who came after her, who tried to stop him, and who were ignored, it's just heartbreaking. Annette Lazar tried to tell her story. She tried to get the police to listen to her and to arrest and charge Bruce, but she was dismissed. They didn't believe her. They just ignored her.
The police
The woman
didn't believe her, huh? Okay.
Yeah, well, Bruce said they just started dating. Didn't believe the woman, just the man. The woman who was found unconscious in his car, who was most likely on her way to a shallow grave if it weren't for the lucky interception at traffic stop, she was also dismissed. No charges were ever filed against Bruce for kidnapping and rape. And lastly, Deborah Colliander, who was determined to do the right thing, to face her rapist in a court of law and let the law take care of it like we are all promised it will. She was found decomposing in a farm field. Whatever system was in place in the 70s and 80s didn't seem to have the victim's well-being in mind. Bruce Lindell was given chances at every turn, and he didn't deserve any of them. It's quite possible that the woman who was offered a ride by a man on the night Pamela Maurer was raped and murdered had narrowly escaped Bruce Lindell. After all, she said he'd asked her to model for him. And after the discovery of the hundreds of photographs by Mr. Garza, it makes her story seem more plausible. To think he approached her just an hour after he had already murdered one young woman. And of all those hundreds of photographs that Mr. Garza threw out, how many will remain nameless and lost? And it begs the question that what if 12 murders was only the beginning? Yeah. So that's it.
I'm telling you. I'm going to tell you something right now. Number one, somebody was pulling on the inside for him because he got away with way too much getting pulled over. That's why I said
too much.
The police, quote unquote, didn't believe her. Who was in on that? And sometimes I get that, like, you cover up something once, but then
it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you have to,
We've said it a million times. Once somebody crosses the line and kills somebody violently, how hard is it to do it again and again and again and again and again?
And not get caught. Exactly.
Well, because they think that they're unstoppable at that point. I've never heard of that guy.
I hadn't either.
Shocker.
That's why I was like shocked. Was shocked. And he literally would have been, if he hadn't taken himself out, there's no doubt in my mind he would have been as big as Ted Bundy or Gacy. He pulled the Ted Bundy stunt with "Please help me. I need your help." And one article claimed, not that it means anything, but the article that mentioned the hundreds of naked photographs of people, that article also said that Bruce didn't care who he had sex with. It could be men too. Like he could have raped men.
Well, he could have killed men too then.
Well, he did. He killed Chuck. And that could have been, and this is all speculation just because of that one article, and it was only in one article. But he could have made a pass at Chuck.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. But I didn't want to say that at the beginning. Or vice versa. Chuck made a pass at him and...
Could.
Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, who knows if 12... I mean, they could basically say that they think he's responsible for 12 people, but it could in actuality be a lot more.
Wow.
And it's scary that the police just let it all go. Or seems that the police let it all go.
They didn't want to look stupid, too. That's what I meant by, like, you let one slide, and then you're like, oh, gosh. It keeps going and going and going, you know?
Yeah. We picked up this girl. This girl was bleeding in a car, so we took her to the hospital, and, we found out she'd been raped, but we let the guy go.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anything if they tried to track him down, because he would be the first suspect, right?
Well, I do like the poetic justice that he took himself out. That doesn't happen very often.
No.
Oh, boy.
But it's live by the knife, die by the knife, right? Live by the sword. Yeah. But I had never heard of him before. Me neither. Ever. And it's shocking. The whole thing was shocking.
What it is. A web. Because I was like, at 16 minutes, you're like, and that's, and I'm like, no. What else happened?
No.
And it got worse.
Rape after assault. I mean,
I just don't think.
Let go at every turn.
I just don't think. People don't stop. People do not stop. You know, you're going to go to prison, you're going to die. That's it. Those are your options. They don't just stop. Unless, which is how he got away with it for so long, is the Golden State Killer, because he really did just stop, which is unheard of.
He got married, right? And
he did all that, but then he was getting too old to jump the fences and run.
That's
so
right.
He just quit. His last victim was 1987, I believe. 1987 to 2016? That's insane.
Yeah, but there's no doubt in my mind that Bruce would have gone on to be infamous.
Oh, and I bet you he's done more people. He just hasn't been connected to him yet. Or maybe never will be, but...
It could have been in a different area instead of Illinois.
Yeah.
And actually, Chuck Huber was born here in St. Louis, and his grave is here in St. Louis, too.
Oh, really?
On the Rock Road.
Oh. Huh.
Yep, because it's not really that far away from us.
No, it's not. I was thinking about that, too, yeah. Well, that was a good one, Jen. Holy moly, Batman.
I know. It's shocking. I had no clue.
Maybe that's why we do the podcast, the psychology of it all. Like, what? I don't know. Just what makes people tick, you know? Like, why do they do what they do? And I know I've said this. If I kill a fly, I feel guilty. I really do. Because I was like, what? That fly wasn't bugging me. It wasn't bugging me. Get it? See what I did there? It's not causing me any harm. So why would I kill it? And then I always let spiders go. I never kill spiders.
I never kill I don't kill anything. Not even wasps. And they're assholes. Yeah. I always try to get them out of the house.
It's crazy. So to think that you just do that and do that to a life and have that life looking at you, the eyes, you know, like, ugh, terrible. Well, that was a good one. And I'm going to have to go down that rabbit hole now. That's what I'll do this afternoon. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
And honestly, there's not really a lot on him. There's a Paula Zahn episode on him, like season 22, episode 5, something like that. And it doesn't even go into everything that he did. It just went into the Pam Maurer case. But it doesn't delve further into anything.
I think there's a lot of killers out there that have done a lot more, and they just, I mean, honestly, I think some of them that are so prolific like that, they cannot even remember who all they killed. You know? I mean, some, let's be honest, are meticulous with their memories, and they remember everything. And that's a whole nother level of creepiness and depravity.
Psychoticness.
Yeah. But,
anyway. I just... Glad he's gone.
Yeah.
Not sad.
Hey, Jen, good job.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the good folks about our little trip?
I do. We are going to go on a dark history tour of the UK.
Like anybody that's listened to us does not know the speech.
I know.
But we're going to pretend like we've never said it.
As of right now, this date, we are recording a couple weeks in advance, but as of right now, we have about 6 spots left. And it's going to be fantastic. Camille and I, as you know, just got back from Scotland, and it was absolutely magical, except for the flights, but we'll have to discuss that some other time. But anyway, the country is amazing. The people are amazing, and we can't wait to go back. But we're going to start in Edinburgh, and we're going to take some really neat dark history tours, like in the vaults where people lived during the plague. And it's supposedly very haunted. It's in Mary's Close. Isn't that what it is? Yeah, yep. Mary's Close. Going to do all sorts of tours there. And then after a few days, we are going to go to York, which is supposedly one of the most haunted places in the UK.
And it's pretty. It's pretty.
Oh, it's pretty. And it's also one of the streets there called the Shambles is where J.K. Rowling had the inspiration for Harry Potter. That's pretty cool. After a couple nights there, we're going to go on down to London, where we're going to go to where?
Jennifer likes to call it the Tower of Terror.
Tower of Terror. That's because I spent too many summers at Disneyland.
Technically, Disney for World. Those folks, it was the Tower of Terror, for sure.
Exactly.
But to us laymen, it is the Tower of London.
Yes. And then we're also going to take a tour of Jack the Ripper. There's going to be a murder mystery dinner. And the whole time, you're going to be with Cam and I. It's going to be so much fun.
That part we're sorry about, but
it's Jen and Cam 24/7. We are going to be with you every step of the way. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And if it's even half as fun as what Cam and I had in Scotland,
I do have to report I did not find my future husband yet. So next year, Scotland, just saying. Still hope.
Men in kilts, I'm telling you. Anyway, we would like you to come. Down in the show notes, there will be a link where you can go and find out about how you can join us. This did sell out once, and we opened it up for more people. So once it's sold out, that's it. It's gone until next year, until we can figure out what we're going to go next year, right? Have no idea. What do you think? Where should we go?
I'm thinking we should open it up to the listeners and let us, because I don't know. I'm down for anything, of course. I would like it to be places that people would like to go. You know?
I would too. I'm willing to travel anywhere. We've got Italy. We've got Australia. We have Austria. We have Switzerland. Anywhere. I'm game. I'm there.
Yep, I agree. Me too. Me too. All right. Enough of that. Until next week, remember, lock your doors.
Keep passing those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya. For more information about this episode, as well as all other sources, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by the hosts, Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. You can reach Nico at wetalkofdreams.com. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from OctoberPod VHS. You can find all of his great works on YouTube. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter with the handle at Our True Crime Pod. You can also email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. We would also at this time like to thank our patrons. We would be so lost without you. Thank you so much. And if you would like to help support the show, you can check us out on patreon.com/Our True Crime Podcast. You can also show your support by leaving a 5-star review on Apple or simply just tell your friends about us. It's that easy. Love ya.